Hi, everyone. Welcome to Thoughts on Thursday, and I'm your host, Chelsea, along with my co-hosts, Mary and Barbara. And we're talking today about all things animals, nature, rocks, the hills, the dirt, everything we share this existence with. And I want to kind of have a, I want to kind of highlight how nature, plants, animals, they're not insignificant. I don't think they take a second place role in this stage we're all playing on. I think if we can learn to realize that we share our being with everyone and everything we realize and spend the time to um look and listen to what's around us. I mean, the world just becomes more alive. And um, Gordy, who I happen to know, who joins us every week, he's my husband. And it was so cute this week when, you know, life's pretty simple here, what gets us excited. But he said, you need to come out to the backyard and see this spider web. It's so cool. And we have a couple trees and a shed, and there's about, I don't know, maybe 6 feet between maybe a tree and a shed. And the tiniest little translucent spider built a web between the shed and the tree. And it was just a web about this big. And it just had about three anchors, two to the tree and one to the shed. But it was just amazing the way you could walk by it. It was just the way the sun was shining that you could actually see it. And we the second day I was outside and I didn't even notice it. I just assumed I had walked right through that section. I just assumed it was gone, but it was just the way the sun was shining again. And I mentioned it to Gordy. He said, no, the spider's still there. We went out and looked, and over the course of 24 hours, he was able, well, I say he, but the spider was able to like maybe add about three more different attachments. And I watched him for a while and I saw how he was just hanging from a string from the web and he was able to, I don't know, propel himself on the dangling web over to the tree to attach, I don't know, another support system. But it was just amazing. And I mean, he was translucent and he had a couple gnats in his web to eat, but he was really no bigger than like a gnat. And it was just amazing to think how all this web, where he stores all the web in such a tiny little spider. But the world is just amazing. And I had been talking earlier with Barbara and Mary about this topic, and then I had to hop in the car and go do something. But I look out on my neighbor's yard, and there was a bunny, which meant so much for me. I've never looked over there and saw just a little bunny sitting, but it reminded me identical of my daughter's area where she lives right across the street. There's a little bunny that just lives in the bushes, and he comes out and sits in the middle of the grass every once in a while. But the bunny was so significant because when me and Barbara were part of a group called Life Leaders, we always talked about bunnies and they were kind of our little sacred animal, they, but I hear you, I see you laughing, Barbara, and feel free to hop in anytime. And I want to hear everybody shares this week, whatever's coming up for you that you'd like to share. And we can also gear it towards communication with animals. And I was thinking about, I'll start that off. I think there's two times in my life where I had communication, nonverbal, telepathic communication with an animal. The first time was when I met a dog named Freckles. He lived on a farm, and me and my husband were visiting his mother, who was now living on this farm ranch, and we were meeting her new fiance, and she was going to move in and they were going to get married. And he had this ranch dog named Freckles, and I knew Freckles was my dog. There was a something about it, and I said, I'm taking Freckles home. Everyone laughed, and it wasn't shortly after that that the owner passed away, and the engagement and wedding that was all happening and all that kind of got put off on the shelf. And Freckles was my dog because Freckles needed a home. I knew it. Freckles told me. We had that communication. And the second time was also with a dog and her name was Sadie, and she was my cousin's dog. And she lived in a small town, and my cousin was going to take her to the dog pound because she was moving again. And I said, no, I'll take Sadie with me and I'll take her to the pound to the Humane Society up in Boise because I feel like she'll have more chance of being adopted. And Sadie got in the car, sat in the front seat, and we were driving back towards Boise, and she vomited, looked at me and said, I'm pregnant. And we had young kids at the time, and we ended up keeping Sadie and having the puppies, and she was a good dog too. But um, communication with animals, it happens. I know Cecilia has a story, and we're probably gonna. I don't know if Cecilia would like to retell this story, but we were talking about it recently. The story about the elephant communication you were telling a friend was doing, I don't know if they were doing reconnective healing with an elephant or, but
I think they were just an animal communicator who has a
oh,
connection with elephants.
Oh, yes,
And
yes, yes. I know what you're talking about. Anna Breitenbach, she's a very famous animal communicator, interspecies communicator is what she calls herself, because we're all animals. We are human animals. So, but she can connect with the essence of the species, because she's had communication with sharks and whales and things, and she doesn't take a shark individually and talk to it. She just knows, and she just connects to the 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 community basically. And she was born in Africa but lived in the United States for a very long time, went to school out here and came and then moved back. But she had she was on a quest, and she was wanting to work with the animals and for the animals and be a voice for the animals. And people were talking about the elephants and they're being captured and mutilated basically for their tusks. But she asked them, what can we do, because your numbers are dwindling, what can we do, how can we help you? We can protest, we can march, we can do whatever. And as a collective, they said, no, see us in love, see us thriving, see us whole and healthy. That's how you're going to help us. See us as light and beauty and healthy and whole. That's how you help us. Don't go in anger in our name. Come with love. And that's what they requested of them. And so they know they don't have a fear of death. They don't have a fear of, their numbers diminishing and going into extinction. They know that there's so much more than that. So if you're going to keep us in your thoughts, keep us in love is what they are saying. Don't go to battle for us. So
Yeah.
that
Thanks, Cecilia. And just know that your stories matter. I mean, we what your stories, Cecilia, are so profound, and it's funny how we go back to them and talk about. Remember when Cecilia talked about this, but the message of that story, the message that, you know, the love, the not go in fear, the, you know,
yeah,
just beautiful.
yeah. But there's one story I shared that I would like to share now. I share
Sure.
it in the training programs for reconnective healing, and that is because each individual animal also has personality, like our us, like our humans, our friends, or whatever. Everybody has a different personality. Everybody has a different like and desire and whatever. And somebody had asked me to do a healing for his horse, and I've had horses in my life, and I love them, love, love, love. And so he said, "Can you come to the stables?" I said, "Yes, yes, let's go." And so we went, um, and he brought out his horse, and I am working with this horse by distance, but the horse is tied up like they normally do. They just tie them to a pole or whatever, and they just have them there. And so I'm playing with this horse and with the frequencies, which I'm very familiar with, and I cannot feel anything. I'm like, this is weird. This is very strange. And so inside, I just came closer, and because I'm very comfortable with horses, I put my hands on the horse, and inside I say, why? And I heard, it's like, I'm a Western horse and he wants me to be English. He's trying to train me English and I'm not going to do it. It's like, oh, I said, I said, inside, but don't you feel better when you can run around in health? I mean, in a healthy manner where you're not lame? Don't you feel better when you can move without pain? And he's like, I'm a Western horse. I'm not going to be English. And he's like, okay. And so I had never had this encounter before. So in this such abrupt way. And so I told the person, I said, he says he's a Western horse, and you're training him in English and he doesn't want to do that. And the horse bucked. It was like, oh. And I just imagined, I realized it's like, I'm sorry, that's what you said. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I should ask before saying that. But he said, well, this horse is so beautiful. I just want him to be English because they're so regal and they're so gorgeous and they're the way they move and the way whatever. And I said, he doesn't want to be English. He wants to be ridden Western. He wants to have fun. He doesn't want to have all these rules and protocols to the way he moves. And so as I had said that to him, the horse then told me, he goes, I like to be brushed and bathed and paraded around. Like, okay, he says he likes to be brushed and bathed and paraded around. And the man, the owner, burst out laughing, laughing hysterically. He is just over the top. He can't get his breath. He's laughing because he says, that's what I do. He says he's a hairdresser. And so grooming is his thing. And he can brush and bathe like nobody's business. And then, of course, the horse is lame, so he can't ride him, and he has to drive the horse. So he walks him around the stables and walks him to show all the other horses how beautiful he is. And he goes, I like to be brushed and bathed and paraded around. It's like, okay. Well, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get this horse you can brush, bathe, parade around, but you're not going to get to ride him unless you let him go Western. And so that's the news I had to share with him. The horse wanted what he wanted, and he didn't want to do it the other way. So that's that.
Yes. Yes, great story.
Mm-hmm.
Anka shared in the chat. Oh, just a sec. I'm going to read what Anka said, and then we'll go on. She says, when I was drained, I have learned to receive energy from a tree that is a nut from my Grammy. I gave the name Fatima because I like the hand of Fatima. I connected her with Austria trees. We should have loved flowers of trees because they feel rain too. I don't go with umbrella for most 10 years now. Thanks, Anka. And I love how you brought up the rain because I feel like, yes, the planet, the sun, the stars, the animals, the plants, the rain, and the wind. Anybody else like to share?
I will.
Okay, Katina and then Darren. Go ahead.
Well, the thing about the tree, I had a story, but the thing about the tree, I just read an interesting line that when we go out and touch a tree, we are touching ourselves because we are the universe. It's not that we're separate from nature. We are nature. But the little story I wanted to tell about calling forth an animal or animals. When I was a child, my favorite pastime was to go, I grew up in the country, was to go down to the creek at the bottom of the hill and pick up the tadpoles before they became frogs, toads and frogs, and just by the handful and just look at them. And I just loved this event. And I did this every season and for years and years. And matter of fact, I have a lot of little stuffed toads and frogs and pins. So years passed, decades passed after I left home. And one day I was thinking really hard about the frogs. I missed the frogs. I thought, I haven't seen a frog in 20 years. I cannot believe this. And I just had really lovely memories. And the next day, when I arrived at the apartment complex, pulled up to my garage door, which I had to get out to open, there was a frog sitting right there on the pavement. Of course, I picked it up, I kissed it, I thanked it for visiting. Oh my gosh, you got my love call. And then I took it to the nearest wooded area and let it go. But I really believe, and still do, that the appearance of the frog was a direct result of my heartfelt memory and longing to see a frog again.
Yes.
And one appeared. So
Yes.
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you.
I love frogs and toads too. I also have a childhood where a creek ran through the valley, and we used to go and collect tadpoles and let them let them grow into frog, collect the baby frogs, bring them all home, put them in the garden. That was the best. And it's so sad that kids really don't have the connection with reptiles like that we did. When Cecilia was talking about the horse, there was a horse came in, an awareness of a horse that I witnessed once came into my space here as Cecilia was talking. And what I saw was I was driving up the road going to see my own horse, and I saw a horse walking just freakishly. Everything was counter. There was nothing smooth. There was nothing instinctual. Somebody was riding it. There was a Latino man riding it, and it looked like those weird like transformer toys that kids can buy, and then you can just make them do like the weirdest stuff. And I was horrified. There was nothing comfortable for this horse. And I could see the level of discomfort that went into training a horse to walk the exact opposite of the way it would normally walk. And I felt like he doesn't ride the horse like that all the time. He was just riding it up the street like that because he thought it looked cool. It was grotesque. And as Cecilia was talking, I started working through witnessing this again. And I think it was a horse version of just contortion. And it was the horse was saying, yes, but I survived. Yes, my branches are burned and, but sometimes I walk normal. It's just when I'm asked to do this, I walk like this because I thrive and I survive. And that's what nature does. And so that thought gives me a little bit of peace. But you know how there's like those things that you see and you just can't unsee it. So, yeah, it's still nature. The horse wasn't starving. It had, but very contorted. But then I don't like human contortionists either. I think being contorted is just kind of weird. I just realized there are human contortionists, and this is kind of what that was. It's very extreme.
Yep. If we're forced to contort or we choose to contort.
In order to survive. But that's the challenge. And you can't thrive and survive without some sort of challenge, whether it's from nature or from something in human people consciousness. It's just there, and somebody's going to encounter it, whether it's a animal or a microbe or another people. We encounter challenge. And I look to nature when I encounter challenge. Always. I'm like, nature, there's a challenge. I need something here. I need to reflect.
Yeah. Did you have a share, Barbara?
Oh, I just actually wanted to just formally introduce Katina. She's a friend of mine who I stayed with when I was in Pittsburgh last week. And the quotes that we got that we were talking about the last couple of weeks came from Katina. She has a notebook that she files away things that she likes. So just to explain who she is and why she's here. So.
Yes.
And as far as nature goes, I remember a time when I was out driving up on Mount Hood with a friend of mine. We pulled over to a little lookout center, and I got out of the car, and there's this ancient tree that was standing there. And it just called to me. And so I went up and just stood in front of it. And it was just, it felt like it had such wisdom and knowing, and it had been there for so long. And I just stood in front of it and just felt so honored to encounter it and to connect with it. It was such a wonderful feeling. So now I'm in our extra bedroom, which is an office, and I look out the window, which I've got the blinds closed today because it's very hot, and have things closed up to keep the heat out. But normally I look out the window and there's lots of trees in the distance, and I just love watching them sway and just looking at different birds in the trees. And I remember a comment from Carlos Castaneda, always look between the leaves. That's where the mystery is. And so I do that as I'm sitting there looking out the window at the trees and stuff. So that's my share. Thanks, everybody.
That story, Barbara, reminds me, we're going to get to Mary, and then maybe Louis Treese would like to share a little bit, one of her favorite tree stories. But I was going to say that story, Barbara, reminds me of when I was walking around Elko, Nevada. I was like walking in the kind of park area where they have parks and public swimming pool anyway. But I was walking around and I was crying. And I was just getting it out. And then I walked along a sidewalk and there's a bunch of weeping willows like right at eye level. And I felt like, oh, they were there to say, we feel you, we feel you. I felt, it was just like, and it made me smile, even though I was just having a little cry. It was just like perfection. Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, just listening to all of the comments and stories about the wind and the trees and the animals. The thread for me seems to be that they are constantly giving. They are there giving to us all the time. And it's for us to take a moment and receive and love and thank them. I think we'd all be so much happier if we just, maybe set a timer every 15 minutes from our days that are so full of nothing and acknowledge these gifts.
Yeah. And they feel like such mirrors
Mm-hmm.
situation. Just like when Katina was mentioning beauty, it's the mirror effect. I mean, we see the beauty because we are beauty. I mean, we see the beauty in nature because we are beauty. And when we know that about ourselves, we can see it. Louis Triest, is this a good time for you to maybe share one of your stories?
I can share quite a lot of shares with you people, but I'll share one that was the nail in the coffin while I had to keep on doing what I do for the last 10 years. As I am part of a healing group of trees, what happens when I was doing distant healing and the people felt very uncomfortable about this new way of healing. And I said, man, come and sit next to your favorite tree. And then I'll do and just sit to the tree, hold the tree, and things like that. And after a while, I started getting reports about, you must see how the tree changed, how the area where the tree is changed. And that is where Talk to Tree a group started with the members, but also for the trees, for the reconnection distant healing. But now everybody is always thinking you're absolutely crazy and why are you doing this and that and everything. And there is one specific thing that I would like to share. It was one of the worst droughts in the Free State. And there came a storm and I need to do my connection at 12 o'clock. And I go out and I look at the scorching sun and the wind that is absolutely blowing and it is dust. And I started with my connection. And the next moment I was in a cocoon of absolute peace, no extra heat. But as a matter of fact, it was kind of cool. There were no wind. And I look outside past this area and I could see how the trees were swaying and nearly breaking and everything. And yet the area where I am is absolutely protected. And that is where I have realized what I am doing is really, even if the people can't see it, it is really a great benefit because Mother Nature had absolutely protect me from the harsh elements from the scorching sun, of the wind, the dust, and I was in a perfect little cocoon while I was doing it. And the other time, it was in winter, very cold, bitterly cold, and it was time to do the connection. I couldn't find the tree, and there were just a little bush. So I go and stand there, and I said, okay, you have to do, you're also part of it, nature and tree. And I was holding like that. And the next moment, there came a heat of glow and warmth that was incapacitating me completely. And the whole 20 minutes that I was busy, I was in absolutely comfort and an ease, and I could see how everything else is way down with frost and things like that. And here where I am, it was absolutely the most nicest warm heat that was constantly flowing from underneath a bush over me. And now people are walking, they go and touch a tree, they go and sit against them, and they have started to realize the benefit of what a tree can do in their life. And they provided protection and shade and the interaction of nature in a tree, the little birds and everything. Once you started looking at it, and I don't have any music in my house. It will sound very strange, but I've got a lot of trees around me and all different. And it is absolutely amazing to listen to the wind, how that is playing through the leaves. It is as if they are making music for me and not just wind that is blowing.
Yes. Thank you for that. I've got to wrap it up for today. We can share some more in our next gathering, but it's been wonderful today, and we'll see you all next Thursday. Love you
Thanks,
all.
everyone. See you.
Thank you, everyone.